This press conference is being called in an environment where there is palpable fear within the country, as persons are not sure about their own security and that of their loved ones. So the opposition is here this morning to highlight the failures of the government and, of course, to put forward practical solutions for these complex issues that are confronting us. First up, we will have the leader of the People's National Party and the leader of the opposition, the MP from South St. Andrew, Mr. Mark Golding. Please make him welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Campbell, General Secretary. I will be making a presentation on the issue of crime and violence. The prolonged use of states of emergency in parts of the country from 2017 to 2020 was ineffective, and the initial positive relief that it brought to the hopes of the people was, over time, reduced to disappointment and frustration as they witnessed the shifting of violent murders to other parts of the country, like the squeezing of a balloon, without any meaningful reduction of murders at the national level. The criminal gangs remained intact, simply moving to areas where the security forces were absent. No sustained benefits to our society in terms of long-term reductions in the rates of violent crime were achieved by the states of emergency. In 2019, the opposition obtained a legal opinion from one of the most senior and respected Queen's Counsels in Jamaica, who advised that the Constitution does not permit the use of states of emergency as a policing tool over a sustained period of time to tackle Jamaica's long-standing crime problem. In November 2021, after a break for over a year, including the general elections of 2020, the government declared states of emergency in parts of Western Jamaica and the southern belt of the corporate area. However, within the first 14-day period of those SOEs, murders continued unabated, including in the states of emergency areas themselves. In keeping with our view that the states of emergency are not an effective mechanism for fighting crime, and that the constitutionality of such use of states of emergency remains in serious doubt, and our belief that there are other lawful strategies that can and should be deployed to get crime under control, we did not support the extension of the November 2021 SOEs beyond their initial 14-day period. Our action in Parliament was in keeping with our oath to uphold and defend the Constitution and laws of Jamaica. In the meantime, we urge the government to use the Zones of Special Operations legislation far more extensively. The ZOZO has bipartisan support and provides a tool by which the military can join the police in securing communities that are torn with internal violence and are out of control. When a ZOZO is declared, the JDF personnel have full policing powers within the area of the ZOZO, and law enforcement in that area is under the joint command of the JDF and the JCF. We believe that the government's conception of the use of ZOZOs is far too narrow and limited. They have only used it in 7 small communities since 2017 when the legislation was passed. We believe that the ZOZO is to be viewed as a lawful alternative to the states of emergency, the main difference being that extended detention without charge is not permissible, and citizens do not lose their basic constitutional rights of access to the court to protect their liberty. There are also other critical pieces of crime-fighting legislation, such as the Enhanced Security Measures Act and a new Firearms Act, which the government committed to delivering on a timely basis as part of the consensus agreement which established CMOC, the Crime Oversight and Monitoring Committee, which is a bipartisan committee on which civil society is also represented. More fundamentally, the government's approach to national security is unbalanced and has led Jamaica to becoming an increasingly violent and dangerous place. Generally speaking, Jamaica needs to tackle the deep inequalities in our society, investing in repairing the most egregious manifestations of that inequality if we are to achieve sustained improvements in our national security situation. There is no other way forward. The government's approach to national security completely ignores this reality. Crime prevention programs, critical ones like the Peace Management Initiative and Unite for Change, have been defunded or abandoned altogether with no effective replacement. This has been a deliberate policy of the government. Community action to prevent disputes from escalating into a series of reprisals must be a critical part of violence reduction strategy in Jamaica, but this has been ignored by the government. The additional resources that have become available to the government because of the success of Jamaica's fiscal reforms over the last 8 or so years have been skewed heavily towards providing ships, aircraft, and other expensive capital equipment to the military. As needed as those things are, the police force, which has primary responsibility for law enforcement and fighting crime in our violence torn society, has been deprived of critical resources to improve their operating capacity and effectiveness. The JCF has been operating with substantially less police officers than its established complement allows. Only yesterday, the Commissioner of Police stated that the force needs an additional 6,000 officers. Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Jamaicans, this government has totally mismanaged the national security of our country. Jamaica has witnessed a 10% increase in murders in 2021 and a 19% increase in murders over the first 3 or so weeks of 2022, with 112 people being killed in just 23 days. Jamaica cannot go on like this. There must be accountability for such poor performance in the critical area of our national security. Dr. Horace Chang's tenure as Minister of National Security has been an abject failure, leaving Jamaicans feeling frightened, hopeless, and in despair. He clearly cannot bring the vision, energy, and vigor and communication skills which that portfolio requires. We are therefore calling on the Prime Minister to relieve him of his duties in that portfolio and give someone else an opportunity to bring a fresh and hopefully more effective approach. Commissioner of Police Anthony Anderson is also hereby being put on warning. He is the main architect and promoter of the government's state of emergency strategy as an ongoing policing tool. No other commissioner of police before him has followed that unprecedented and what we regard as a dangerous path, abrogating the most basic and hard-won rights of Jamaicans in the name of ordinary policing. The constitutionality of his use of the states of emergency is in serious doubt. As I have already shown, there are other tools in the toolbox for him to use, and some others that the government needs to quickly deal with and address to provide him with, which should have been legislated for already. If the Commissioner cannot find another strategic approach to getting the crime problem under control within the next 60 days, I think he must call it a day as well and allow someone else to take up the mantle of Commissioner. Thank you.
grade. I don't know of anybody else who is given a task and you have your performance decreasing, getting worse by 19%, and you come to the country to say you're giving yourself a passing grade. And for the Prime Minister to say he still enjoys his full confidence. And I hope that people are taking note. I too was a little bit flummoxed, confused about the release I saw yesterday. But it underscores the point that this government listens to no one, not even to their own members. So they have to try and speak to them through a release to the country. And every time a politician from the PNP speaks on a matter, they say that it's been politicized. It is not true. We're politicians, yes, but we can have genuine concerns as we do in relation to crime, COVID, the banking fees. It would be you seeing a doctor at the hospital with a stethoscope. Would you question his motives? No. That's what you expect to see, right? But politicization of these issues are actually what the Jamaica Labour Party does. You will well recall when the Prime Minister said that if you vote for the PNP, you may lose your life. And that if you vote for the Labour Party, you'd be able to leave your windows and doors open. I can recall him telling Senator Bunting that he shouldn't come here with this nonsense about crime is an everybody problem. Right? Take some responsibility. He went on to say that, yes, crime and health are national issues, but if the government is going to come to you and say it's an everybody problem, what's the point of having a government? He actually said these things, you know. Minister Shaw said that when the PNP is in power, we have pure pestilence on the land. These are the things that have been said by these members before. That's not what we are doing here today. We're here today with genuine concerns for ourselves, our loved ones, and for our brothers and sisters of this country. And so at this point in time, if there are any questions, comments from the media, we'll be willing to take those. If they're not, then let me also remind Dr. Chan that if Prime Minister Holness is not brave enough to reassign you, because I realize that he's afraid to make certain moves. So like Bobby Montague is the leader of the black section of the Labour Party. He doesn't really want to trouble him. If he doesn't want to trouble you because you're a General Secretary, I'm asking you, Minister Chan, to do the honorable thing and to resign from the post of Minister of National Security and allow somebody who has some vision and some testicular fortitude to come forth and do the job. Questions?
We have a question from Siobhan Campbell.
Good morning. To Mr. Golding, the extension or widening the usage of zones of special operations, both the Prime Minister and the Commissioner of Police have been on record to suggest that the resources to allow that currently do not exist, and they will widen the use of the ZOSOs as those resources allow. Do you feel that's a fair response, or do you believe that the resources do exist for this to be done?
Thank you, Siobhan. I don't accept that argument. I think it's a false argument. The zones of special operations are primarily a tool of law enforcement to get areas which have chronic problems of crime and violence that have flared up and where people are unsafe and need additional security to get them under control. They have, the ZOSOs, an additional aspect, which is that the Social Investment Committee is established to look at the longer-term challenges to social cohesion in that zone and what can be done about it, and a plan of action is put in place. In terms of the phasing of any investments, that naturally has to fit within the fiscal capabilities of the government at a given point in time. But that cannot be an excuse for not using a lawful tool to provide safety and security and save lives. They can phase the investments to fit the capacity of the government to pay for it, but there must be a response to the problems that the people are facing of a lack of safety and of serious jeopardy in their homes. And the question of budgetary support for that is not really an issue, because in the same way that states of emergency require the deployment of police and soldiers and the support of that on the ground is the same way as applies to ZOZOs. And the social investment piece, which is very important, must be phased in accordance with the capacity of the government in its fiscal accounts to pay for it.
I hear quite often people ask, what is it that the opposition is doing to deal with crime and violence in the country? Firstly, we have one government at a time. The People's National Party is not the government. Yes, we have some responsibilities in the governance, but we are not the government. We don't have the authority to institute policies and programs of the government. And in order to do that, you need to be equipped with the pertinent and time-sensitive information, which is not at our disposal. In fact, when I sat on the National Security Council, those information were kept away from me. I only was invited when there was announcements to be made. So I was privy to it before you got it in the public. But I knew nothing that you don't know. That said, to the Crime Management Oversight Committee, we in the opposition have long stated for years now, dealing with crime and violence in the country is a whole country issue. And we stand ready to play our part. When the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce made a proposal for the stakeholders consultation to look at a range of approaches to deal with the crime situation in the country, the opposition stepped up. We responded. We participated.
And as long as those remain in serious doubt, we will have a problem with using states of emergency as the primary tool for policing the situation. There are other tools available, and we must use them well, use them decisively, get the JDF fully involved in all areas where a joint response is required. The law provides for it already. Let us do it. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Golden, whenever there's a rise in crime, there's always a call for the commissioner to step down. Do you think that's the right approach?
It depends on the situation. I don't know whose question that is, but it depends on the situation. In certain instances, I think it is appropriate for the accountable person, the person with whom the buck stops, to step down if they have manifestly showed themselves unwilling or unable to provide an effective response in carrying out their duties. So we need, I think, accountability. And where I see the commissioner continually saying he can't be effective without a tool, the constitutionality of which is in serious doubt, I say to him, look, change the narrative. Use the tools that are available to you. Let us see some positive results from that effort. And I think 60 days is a reasonable period of time for him to achieve that.
Do we need to expand the police force in order to deal with the ratio of citizens to police?
For many years, we've been making a point that the ratio of security forces, in particular police officers, to population is on the low end of the scale in Jamaica. In fact, between 2015 and the beginning of, there was no net increase in the number of police officers. It was over 2,000 below the established complement of the force. We made the point repeatedly that the high level of recruiting in the JDF, that increased the JDF by thousands, was really a misallocation of resources. The priority should have been to increasing the number of police officers who are trained in intelligence gathering, in doing criminal investigations, and in preparing cases for prosecution. None of these things are the strength or the core training, if at all, in the military. So we've really seen an inefficient allocation of the massive increase in resources, 10 times in terms of the capital allocations. And yet we're not seeing the results because the expenditure has not been in the priority areas.
For the last 3 months,
violent crime, in particular murders, have been trending down. Now, bear in mind, the government has been in office for 9 years. That's 108 months. And out of the 108 months, they can only talk about 3 months. But why is those 3 months showing substantial reduction? Because the police are pursuing a strategy that the commissioner refers to as focused deterrence. This is not net fishing. This is spear fishing, targeting those who produce the most violence. This is what the PNP has been saying for the last 7 or 8 years. And Andrew Holness preferred to stand up at a podium and declare state of emergency after state of emergency, with his flanked by his generals like a wannabe tyrant. Like a wannabe tyrant. What was the result for the last 8 years? Murders increased 25% in this country. 2,300 more Jamaicans were murdered because of this foolish pursuit of Andrew Holness. The figures will show more Jamaicans have been murdered under his leadership than under any 2 terms in the history of Jamaica. This man should be hanging his head in shame. That is why I am saying he's not only playing the fool and playing the clown, but he has played with the lives of Jamaican people, and that is a shame and disgrace. And he must never be given a chance to go back to Jamaica House. For years, we have been begging him. Not only was the serial and routine use of states of emergency unconstitutional based on our advice by learned King's Council, but it was ineffective, totally ineffective. And it's not until the People's National Party stopped supporting the extensions in the Senate. It's not until we took them to court and others took them to court and start whittling away at that foolish pursuit that they have eventually abandoned it. And in the 2 years that they've abandoned it, the first year, murders came back down to the level that they inherited it. Not even below. You hear them talking about percentage. Percentage talking about coming down last year is like a man stab you with a 6-inch blade and him pull out back 2-inch. You're not going to thank him for that. This year, the first year, we're seeing real reductions, and it has nothing to do with Andrew Holness and the Labour Party. So that is one thing to show you that not only is not playing chess, he has played with the lives of Jamaicans, and they have lost 2,300 unnecessary lives under his leadership. The worst performance of any prime minister, not just in history, but I am prophesying in the history of this country for all times. The worst prime minister when it comes to crime.